This is the Northstar Sports Show with ET&B.
Welcome into the Northstar Sports Show. I'm Ethan Gilman, the ET part of this podcast.
And I'm B, the Brandon part of this podcast.
And we'll get started here in just a second, but kind of just letting you know what this podcast is going to be about. This first episode, I think we'll cover just the Vikings. We'll recap their season, look at the state of the team, who's gone, who's stayed so far. We're still, I think, a couple weeks away from them actually making any roster moves, but we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at next year's teams. It's not a schedule yet, but we'll take at who we're going to face off against, and then we'll hit on some other things as we go along. Brendan, you ready to start?
Yeah, I'm ready to start, so let's get in with this. So we go to the scores of the first half of the season. Was not good.
No, it wasn't. The Vikings, of course, everyone knows, start off 1-5. Lost to the Packers to open it up, then to Indianapolis. That Indianapolis loss, I thought, was a lot uglier than that Packers loss.
I mean, you could say that, but any kind of loss of the Packers always has a little extra little dig in it. And
it does. But yeah, that loss to Indianapolis, we did lose Elflein and Barr. They both went on injured reserve. Barr was for the season pet. Elflein eventually would get cut. He would be signed by the Jets later on. Then next we would lose to the Titans in a 1-point loss. That was tough to watch, and that was heartbreaking, quite honestly. But Jefferson started to get going in that game. Then we finally got a win against the Houston Texans. Our team looked good. It looked complete. It looked front to back, offense, defense. Everything looked like it was starting to come together.
It goes wishy-washy, and we were washed out to sea for the first couple games, and then started to reel back, and then we get just shoved out to sea again towards the end of the season.
And then next, we were in Seattle. We lost to them 27-26. That was a game I thought we should have won. Some play calling that wasn't too great towards the end, and then Dantzler had a missed man coverage assignment. So we lost that game. It was close. I thought Zimmer was aggressive enough on the calls. I thought he did the right thing, but unfortunately we did fall to the Seahawks. Then next week, we fall to the Falcons on the very first play. Kirk Cousins throws an interception, and you could just tell how that one was going to go. Then we reached the bye week, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we come into Green Bay and put a pounding on them.
We did. We pulled. I don't know where the team decided to come from. I don't know where it was sitting, but they came out. They ran the ball. I don't think Green Bay was ready for it, which is kind of weird. You come to Minnesota, you're ready for Cook. Now at the end of the season, you're ready for Jefferson. You're always ready for Thielen, but it looks like they just weren't physical enough to come up and hit Cook and stop him.
Yeah, I mean, not only did he lead the team in rushing, but he led the team in receiving as well. He had 63 receiving yards. 50 of those came on a running back screen from Cousins that he took to the house. Cook had 4 touchdowns in that game and over 200 yards of total offense. That was just, I mean, up until that point, I mean, Cook had some good games, but that just looked like, okay, this is what our team's going to be kind of all about this year.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at it kind of like the Panthers, their whole offense goes through the running back, and it's the same kind of thing. You get Cook going, and Cousins can then play action off, and he can throw the ball like he needs to. And it's just kind of a whole thing. Like the Panthers, McCaffrey's gone, and they kind of tanked the season on it. He's just a whole team.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because I thought the Panthers were going to be in contention for a playoff spot. But yeah, we beat the Packers 28-22. Those were kind of perfect conditions. Went into Green Bay, and it was windy. The balls were kind of in the air a little too long. They were sailing, or they were being put off track by the wind. But again, a win nonetheless. Then we came back home to take on the Detroit Lions, and when we play the Lions, if we're at home, it always seems like a lower scoring game and we rack up the sacks. When we're in Detroit, it seems like it's a shootout.
It always is, too. It goes, like you said, it's all sacks. I remember a couple of years ago when we just racked Stafford.
Yeah.
It was like 9-sack game, and it's like, ouch. And then they come back, we go there, and it's just the balls everywhere. It's like the team just does not travel inside the NFC North very well.
No, it really does not. But in that Lions game, of course, the return of Adrian Peterson and Everson Griffin. Griffin, of course, we had the kind of controversy with him. He said he was going to come back, make the Vikings pay for letting him go. But it looked like it was all love after the game with Zimmer, thankfully. There was no bad blood. Cook went over 200 yards in that game. He looked fantastic. Really no one in the receiving game looked too flashy. Cousins just kind of got it around to everyone in that game, including Amir Abdullah, who scored on a screen as well.
And that's one thing I did like Cousins throughout the season. He spread the ball out more so than he used to. He used to just target in on one player. He still does it, but he used to, in other seasons, he'd target in on only Diggs is getting the ball this year. Only Thielen's getting the ball this game. I'm only going to check down to minimal players, and now it looks like he's kind of spreading the ball out around. I don't know if that's a better play design, and maybe he's just feeling more natural with it, but I guess we'll see for next year.
Yeah, so then after that, we would travel to Chicago on Monday night. As you mentioned, we usually don't travel well, and Minnesota in Chicago is one thing. On a Monday night, oh my goodness, it usually spells disaster.
Any kind of big primetime game for the Vikings is rough. You watch with a resuscitator next to you.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. But in that game, Cousins, he showed up. He showed out in that game, as did Jefferson. Jefferson had over 100 yards in that game. So he was the story. He had a couple big third down catches that kept the drives going. Thielen opened up the scoring for us with a nice one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. That was beautiful. I mean, just so Thielen-esque.
It really, I mean, the way he does it is just, it makes it look easy. There's no other way around it. I mean, you watch some of the other receivers and they catch the balls and they can make it look like a difficult catch on an easy pass, and he makes the hardest catches look difficult. I remember there was a couple games where he dropped an easy pass. It's like, you can do this laying backwards, sliding, and you can catch the ball, but you can't just catch it right in front of you. Are you kidding me? Was it not hard enough for you? Are you just bored?
Yeah, maybe he just gets bored with the easy ones. But there was a lot of talk about how we were going to have Cook have a big game in that one, and how he was going to be the offense. If he didn't get going, we weren't going to have success. Well, he was held to under 3 yards a carry and only 96 yards. I mean, we say 96 as if that's not good. It still is, because a lot of teams and players this year didn't even get 1,000 yards. I think there were, four or 5,000 yard rushers this year?
There really wasn't that many of them,
No.
and I think outside of Henry, and it's kind of a revolving cast between underneath Henry and Cook, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of who's there, a rookie, there's always a rookie or two that comes up, and if they maintain, then you watch them, but for the past few years, it's just kind of rotating cast of who gets 1,000, who gets 1,000, who gets up higher. It's just kind of different from what we, especially Viking fans, are used to. And Peterson's just like 200.
Yeah, it really is. But it's kind of the league. But I think league's going back towards a little bit more run. Just more or less, it's running back by committee now than one guy taking every snap. After that win in Chicago, we came home for a 3-game stretch, and we were sitting at 4-5. And if we were to win that 3-game stretch at home, we were going to look pretty good at 7-5. We would have been right in position to grab even a 5 seed, as high as a 5 seed in the playoffs. So we were looking good, but we had to beat Dallas first, and that game, no defense to speak of for either team. It didn't look pretty. Cook got the score first. He ran it in from about 2 yards out, and he bent his face mask going in on one of them, and I thought that was just kind of like, that is Cook right there.
And just a big, mean man running the ball. You hit someone hard enough, you break your helmet or bend the helmet. The other guy's dinged a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I've been dinged a few times, but damn, I've never bent a helmet.
That's another level. Thielen would go over 100 yards again. He would again have another one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. That was just another beautiful play. Cousins had over 300 yards, but that game, it came down to a 2-minute drive, and Cousins had the ball, and since he's come to the Minnesota Vikings, that has been the biggest, I think, problem for me with Cousins, is when it gets to crunch time. That's kind of when he falls under the pressure.
Yeah, and I think at points in this year, you watch him, he's grown since the first season he's been here, and whether that's coaching or Cousins actually growing as a quarterback, he seems like when he first came in, he needed the running game. If you didn't have a running game, you weren't going to win the game with Cousins. And the next year you get a couple more wins where he didn't necessarily have a full running game. And this year we had, like you said, the Bears game, it was a lackluster running game, and Cousins came out and won the game. And maybe that's Cousins' next step, is to get better in that 2-minute offense, because normally I could tell you, I could sum up every 2-minute offense for the Viking this year. It's a run, doesn't go anywhere. Go to pass, sack, pass again a third time, sack or incomplete, and then we punt.
Yeah, and you're totally right. It usually does go that way for the Vikings, and you kind of mentioned it too, though, that, it's hard for him, I think, to stand back there sometimes because our offensive line is so porous at times. So it probably does get to you, but as a quarterback, it can get to you, but you got to push past that.
like I was telling you in the Bucks game, you got to have that kind of calmness that you don't like to give Brady any more credit than the man needs. He gets all of it from everybody. Right. But he stand back there. He dropped the football. He got the snap and just dropped it, leaned down, picked it up, and threw a pass.
Yeah.
You need to have that kind of calm where I think just about any other quarterback picks it up and just scrambles because they're worried.
Yeah, exactly. So that loss to the Dallas Cowboys on that 2-minute drive put us back to 4-6. Then we came back the next week against Carolina Panthers, a game we should have just blown out of the water. But we were down early. Then we came back and we're up 14-10 at halftime. And then right out of the half, Jeremy Chin gets a strip sack into the end zone for a touchdown. Oh, and then right on the next drive, only like 2 plays later, Cook gets stripped, and Jeremy Chin takes back the fumble for another touchdown. That was the first time that the same player has taken a back-to-back drives, a fumble return for a touchdown. I think it was since 1948.
It is a long time. He really put in a bid for Defensive Player of the Year
yes, right there.
He's like, all right, I'm going to take this. Oh, you're going to give it to me too? All right, I'm going to go in there.
Yeah, that was incredible. It was... As much as I hated to see it, it was fun to see because it was like, wow, this can't be happening twice. Really, it's happening twice. I thought he was maybe down, but he wasn't. And just the awareness to take it, pick it up, go into the end zone. It was an incredible play. I do not like many other teams besides the Vikings, but that was something to behold in that play.
And I mean, prior to, he was already a very good player. They had talked about Defensive Player of the Year beforehand, and I think I saw a lot of defensive players come out this year, and not a lot of them stuck very well. They played decent, serviceable, but not a lot of them stuck like this high-profile, you are a number 1 pick, type players.
Yeah, and, in that game, Cook, he was a bit dinged up. He only ran for 60 yards, and Thielen, he was injured for that game, so he wasn't playing. Our leading receiver for that game was Olabisi Johnson. He had 74. That was nice to see him come out, but we really don't use anyone besides Thielen, Jefferson, and then a tight end.
We really don't. We come into these games and you have your 1, your 2, and your tight end. The tight end kind of revolves because of injuries and who we think we get better mismatches with. And that's all we really use. We don't really use a lot of slot receivers. We don't bring in the upper or the lowers in to come play very often unless there's an injury. And when they do come in, they do play. They bring it and they don't shy away from any of it.
No, they don't. But when you look at this Vikings offense, you really see we don't use the slot receiver a bunch. Even in the shotgun, we'll put a tight end out wide and even a running back, and almost as if to purposely not bring in a slot receiver, it seems like at times. But a little off track here. We'll get back on it. That game, again, we were down 24-14, 10-point lead right after 2 consecutive fumble returns for touchdowns. It looked bad. It didn't look good. We looked like we were all out of sorts. Then all of a sudden, we made this little bit of a comeback here and there. We got some points back, and it looked like we were on track to come back. We stopped them on 4th down late in the game, and it was time to punt. They punted away. Chad Beebe's back there. He throws up the fair catch signal. It gets to him, and he muffed the punt.
That's a very Viking way to lose the game, too. The special teams will lose the game. It's almost a guarantee thing. And he fumbles it, and it's on like the 5-yard line, right? And it's, as you think, oh, all right, game's over, fine, turn it off. I see how this is going to end. And surprisingly, it didn't end that way.
No, it didn't, and I think even more surprising for me was the fact that the Panthers chose to throw on all 3 downs. I mean, I understand maybe 1st down, and then you run it on the last 2, and even if you don't get it, you still kick the field goal, which they did. But I mean, you have a chance to go up and score a touchdown to literally put the game out of reach, and you don't do that? Like, that's crazy to me, and their run game was doing really well.
Yeah, they were pounding us with the run game, and he said it was really odd that it came out in all 3 and just threw the ball into the end zone. I think any team, you have to give at least 1 run when you're that close.
Oh, absolutely. You got to let your running backs have a chance to try and pound it in themselves. That's what they're back there for. But fortunately, they did not get in. They kicked the field goal. So it was up to Kirk Cousins, that 2-minute drill we were talking about. And he came out and he surprised me because he went down the field. He marched that team down the field. We looked methodical. He looked on point. His balls looked better than ever. And I mean, we were getting downfield quickly. And then all of a sudden we get inside the 20 and it's like, oh boy, we're going to fall. We're gonna crumble. And shotgun pass, 3rd down goal. Chad Beebe redeems himself.
He catches it, and it's like the middle of the end zone, right?
Yeah.
He jumps up, catches it, lands. You always worry about when they land, the ball's going to pop up out. But no, he brings it back. He went from like, you're not coming on the bus. Yeah, come on.
Yep. Yeah, he went from, straight villain to hero there, and got the Vikings within one. Dan Bailey comes out, he kicks the extra point, somehow makes it, and it's 28-27, but it's not over. Panthers get the ball back, and they all of a sudden start to march downfield. They have a kicker who's got a powerful leg. They get inside his field goal range, kick is up, and it's got the leg, but it's wide left.
And I think it's just more of a issue with a lot of the teams, a lot of the kickers in the NFL right now. I don't know if they're in their own heads or if it's we were blessed for so many years with actually good kickers, but it seems like missing is becoming more and more of an issue.
Yeah, it really does. That kind of was a problem this year with a lot of kickers, like you mentioned. But either way, the Vikings got the victory in that game, 28-27. Bridgewater came back to where it all started for him. Nice embrace between him and Zimmer and the other former teammates he had here in Minnesota. Rodney Smith, a U of M running back, played for them. That was his first game with the Panthers, actually, against Minnesota. He carried the ball, I think it was 8 times for 30 yards, so not a bad outing there for Rodney Smith. Then after that game, we hosted Jacksonville, the one-win team who somehow beat Indianapolis the week 1. And I thought, with that win, Jacksonville was going to do a lot better. They didn't. That's that. But that game, it looked bad from the get-go. They drove down the field, and I think in 4 plays, they scored on a tipped fluke touchdown to Laviska Shenault. It was just, I was so mad.
And you watch it, too, and it's just like, it plops, it goes right over, it's Smith, right? It goes right over him, and they catch it, and it's like, you just can't get like this idea that you just like throw your hands up. It's like I don't know how else you could lose. Yeah. It's you can play good coverage and then stuff like that happens. And it's like why even be a fan?
It was tough to watch, but I mean, good job, good awareness by the receiver Laviska Shenault to hold on to it in the end zone. They score, they get the lead, and they look like they're going to hold on to the lead because the Minnesota Vikings really had no offense to speak of in the first half, and I think they ended the first half with the lead, but they had under 100 yards of total offense.
They did, and it's another thing. You just look at a wide spectrum back at the season. They're a second half team, and that also being emphasis in Cousins' fourth quarter stats that are ridiculous.
Yes.
They're top 5 in the NFL for fourth quarter, and I don't think it's very close by that either. I don't know if we just need like a warm up period. If we got to get to the stadium sooner to warm up so that we hit that good stride in the first quarter. It's weird to me because I feel like some seasons we flip and flop. We come out strong in the first half and then whimper out in the second half, or we come out wimp and then crazy in after halftime, and I don't know how we put that together.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like a high school team you and I played with back in our playing days. But so yeah, they came out of half with the lead somehow, but on the very first play out of the half, Kirk Cousins throws a pick 6 to Joe Schobert, and they retake the lead. It looked ugly, but all of a sudden, Kirk Cousins, he composes himself, get back out on the field, and all of a sudden it looks good. It starts to look like things are clicking, and they did. Vikings get downfield, they score a couple points, they grab the lead, and it's a close game still with the Jags, which it shouldn't have been, but we still had the lead. I think we punted the ball down, and it was a beautiful punt inside their own 10. We got a couple plays, and we get a sack in the end zone, and we get that safety, because without that safety, we lose that game.
Oh, I mean, obviously it goes into overtime, so
yeah.
we needed it because they came back at some point, but it's one of the few times the defense showed up and actually made a good play. I'm not saying that there's not other times they made good plays and individual players didn't make awesome interceptions, sacks, or anything, but that was one of those that we needed the defense to do something, and they came up big.
They did, and so we would actually get the ball back, but kind of nothing really happening until they kicked that game-tying field goal, so it would go into overtime. The Vikings got the ball to start overtime. Kyle Rudolph, you could see he was happy to win the coin toss. He said receive and walked off because he was like, all right, let's go win this thing. We get the ball, and first play is okay, but then we take a big sack, and then an incomplete or a short pass for 3 yards.
I cannot stand when we check down on 3rd and 15. If the 3 yards isn't going to matter. You're trying to play field position, get 10, not 3.
Right.
And if it's an incomplete, you're punting 3 yards backwards. It doesn't matter. At least take the shot near the sticks. Try to get that first down. And I know you want to get it to your playmaker and let them make the play, but the stat on that has to be so little. I mean, you just got to look at it and be like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, because, I understand it, wanting to try and get, like you said, get your playmaker in the open space, make him make a play. And I don't get it either. Like, if you want to do a check down play like that, do it on first and second down. And then on third down, tell your guys, get to the sticks, turn around, catch the ball. Because you're just setting yourself up for failure if you don't.
Yeah, and on 1st and 10, you get those 3-4 yards on that little dunk down play. That matters because it puts you in second better.
Yeah.
But on 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, we've been at 3rd and 20 and done it a few times, and it's like, granted, those odds aren't great to begin with. They're all very, very low. You just throw your hands up, and it's just like rolling over on the play.
It really is. And so we had to punt the ball away from deep in our own territory. We punt it away. They get the ball back in really good position, actually. And they're looking like they may put a drive together, go down, kick the game-winning field goal. All of a sudden, Harry the Hitman comes up with a nice interception on an overthrow. We get the ball back, and we get a drive going downfield. We just start to give Cook the ball. He starts hammering away at that defense. We get down inside the 10, and I was really upset we didn't give Cook the ball a couple more times and let him score. Instead, we brought Bailey out. I didn't like that because he had missed some field goals up to that point, but luckily he kicked the game winner there as we went on to win 27-24 in overtime. Then we headed to the Bucks. Now, in that situation, we were 6-6. We needed to win at least 2 games out of our last 4 to make the playoffs. That's all we needed. 2 games, because at that point we had the number 7 seed. 2 games. That's all we needed. We go into Tampa Bay and it looks good. We stop them on defense. Our offense is clicking. We get into the end zone first. Oh, we stop them again on defense. We get the ball back. We get in the end zone again. All of a sudden it's 14-0.
And I think a lot of people were just stunned by it, as the Bucks were too. But you have Brady back there, so I hate to be stunned for a play and he'll rumble back always as he does. But this is in the precursor of this the last few weeks. Bailey has missed field goals, he's missed extra points, and you kind of just start holding your breath every time he's on the field at this point. And then this game, he just collectively craps in the bed.
Yeah, he did. He missed 3 field goals and 1 extra point, leaving 10 points on the field, because after his first one missed, you could tell it really started to go downhill for the Vikings. All of a sudden, the offense was nowhere to be found. The defense was letting big plays happen, and so they started to score some points. At halftime, it looked still a winnable game, but then Tom Brady and the defense started to step up, and they pulled away. It was 26-14, the win. But you just think, if he makes all the kicks that he missed, 10 points, that's 26-24. I can't imagine that if he makes all of them, that Tampa Bay even gets to 26 points.
I mean, it does. When you get up higher and higher and score, it differs the play calling. And you have people that say, well, I mean, you let the game fall in other ways, but you need the points because it dictates the way you call the rest of the game. And with them up, you force the ball in Brady's hand more. And in the middle of the season, in the early part of the season, he struggled at some points because he didn't know his receivers as well. He in a new system for the first time in his life, and I think you could have put the pressure on him and made him struggle.
Yeah, you really could have, and unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. Yeah, they did get the win 26-14, as I mentioned. Then we came back home against Chicago. We had to win again. 2 games. That's all it was. 2 games out of the last 3. That's all we needed. And our defense was nowhere to be found, and neither was our offense in the first half against the Bears. It looked bad. It looked ugly. Whatever the adjective you want to use for it, it looked awful, and that game did not go our way either. It wasn't a bad game stat-wise offensively. Cousins over 250, Cook over 100 yards, Jefferson over 100 yards, and late in that game, Dantzler had a pick in the end zone, which really sealed it to where we could actually get a drive going and come back in the 2-minute drill, and Cousins he can't do it.
And I think that's his next, if he's going to continually to be our quarterback, this is the last, or not the last, but a big step he needs to finish is finishing games. He can bring games back. He can bring them close in the fourth quarter to where it's a 1-drive game. And now he just needs to be able to punch it in there. Finally, to click that ticket and win the games is his last issue. And I think some of it is his decision-making and Cousins himself. Some of it is the line, and some of it's play calling. I mean, you can only get so predictable when it's 2 minutes, run the ball, sack, incomplete. Yeah,
really, it's so tough because, like you mentioned, it's all those things combined, but at the end of the day, it does come back to be on the quarterback, because we talked about it a little earlier, like Tom Brady, he just sits back there, throws the ball, and looks calm, and he's going to either have to develop that or do something. We lost that game against the Bears. Then we go down to New Orleans on Christmas Day. That was...
Oh, let's skip it.
I wish we could, but it was bad, and there were so much bad that it showed a glare in the defense that was there, but it showed that glaring need so much more.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have Kendricks for the second half of the season very much, and Kendricks is a huge part of that inside, huge part of the run stop, because he's all over the field. He'll make tackles that, frankly, I don't think many people can get through the line. I don't know how he does it. And it showed how porous the front defensive line was. I mean, 6 touchdowns by Kamara. You gotta throw the white flag, and they're telling you can only get 3 yards a run or something, because holy crap.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he scored 6 rushing touchdowns in that game. We didn't want to tackle him. I mean, it literally looked like they didn't want to even tackle him. It looked like they were just like, here, tie the record, please. This is our Christmas gift to you. It looked bad. It did not look like they wanted to play out there. It was embarrassing. Cook under 100 yards. Thielen close to 100 with 97. Jefferson actually got shut down that game. I think he only had a couple catches, and he was guarded well, but that was a nasty loss, 52-33. And you kind of mentioned it. If your offense scores 33 points, that should be enough.
I believe that, because as many times as you want to, you can just want to lean on your offense, go score more points, and then we don't need to play defense. They won't do anything. But you need both, and if my number is 30, if you could put up 30 points, your defense should be able to hold them under 30. To me, that's the winning number right there.
It should be, and if you look at it, the Saints did it. They got their lead, and then their defense stepped up and made some plays, and eventually got the ball back for their offense to win the game. So again, a big loss there against the Saints, 52-33. Last week of the season, we went to Detroit, and this one was, again, a shootout. Detroit got the lead first, but then the Vikings came back and made a couple plays, and we got the lead at the half. It looked good. Jefferson, in that first half, got the rookie receiving record. He passed Randy Moss's rookie receiving record, I should mention, because later in that game, he would get Anquan Bolden's 17-year-old rookie receiving yards record that he broke, and he finished with 1,400 on the season.
And this is with him not starting the first 2 games. He was behind, was it BC?
Yeah, I think it was BC and kind of Chad Beebe kind of 1-2 punch.
Yeah, and you wonder how many more yards. I mean, minimum, I would say 100 out of those 2 games, or 2, and you're looking at 16, and he's very well could have been leading in the NFL for most of those games.
Yeah, and then you just look, he only had 7 touchdowns, which, hey, that's still good when Adam Thielen gets 14 of them. But you just think, Justin Herbert is going to win the Rookie of the Year award. As much as we want Justin Jefferson to be, I think it's going to be close, but I think just because Herbert had a great season, over 4,000 yards, over 40 touchdowns, it's a great season. Yes, Justin Jefferson does have the historic part of it with beating the Hall of Famer Randy Moss and the 17-year-old record, but Herbert just did something that I don't think we've seen a rookie quarterback ever do.
No, he came out and, you watched the first game against Mahomes where he went toe-to-toe with Mahomes with much less firepower and much less of a team. And I don't know, when I watched that game, I enjoyed it, and I was like, I like him.
Yeah, he was good. I was happy he was able to get a chance to start. Unfortunately, his backup during that season, Taylor, had a unfortunate accident happen where he punctured his lung, and that's just should never happen to anyone. I felt so bad for him.
And just like Jefferson, you wonder if you give him Hubert that extra game too, and his stats are even bigger.
Yeah.
At minimum, maybe he gets 43 touchdowns and add maybe another 300 yards of that, and it's just ridiculous that as a rookie, came out and did that and looked so good.
He did. He looked like a 5-year pro out there. But back to the Vikings game against Detroit. We would win that game. Jefferson looked good. Of course, again, he beat the 17-year-old receiving record. Cousins, he looked fiery. But again, it's the Lions' last game of the season. They were going to let him throw it. He threw for over 400 yards. Cook was out because his dad unfortunately passed away at such a young age. Hopefully he's able to come back and clear his mind and not have that weigh on him too much. But that's losing a parent. No one should ever experience that, and it's unfortunate. But either way, Madison did get the start. He ran for 95 yards. Jefferson had 133 in that game. It looked good. And something that we didn't mention is the tight ends. Because after that Carolina game, Rudolph was out for the remainder of the season, and Conklin and Irv Smith looked really good.
They came out strong. Conklin, I think, came out stronger than Smith did towards the end of the season.
I would say so.
the way he looked, he catch the ball and he looked angry. He's running, don't get in my way, or I'm just going to put you right in the ground. And Smith, like you say, he is a mismatch against any linebacker because it's just, he's faster. Like you said, he's a receiver and a tight end body. He's big and fast, and it's hard to match up against him.
It really is, and so they did well, and I think Conklin had a couple big plays there in that Lions game, as did Smith, and we would win that game 37-35. A really bad call. The refs had a roughing the passer call on Cousins, and it wasn't even close. It should have been a sack, but I digress. So now we'll shift gears a little bit. We'll go to the state of the team. Right now, we have lost at least one coach and GM for sure. Marwan Malouf, the special teams coordinator, he's gone. Thankfully, that
something needed to change.
Yeah, it had to, and he's gone, and I think Dan Bailey will be gone as well. I don't see bringing him back, but maybe we do with a new coach. I don't know. It's a little early to be seeing that because there's so many things that could happen between now and the start of free agency.
There's a lot of variables that, like you said, that can happen. You change a couple things, and maybe you just try to stick it out with Bailey another year. And with all the other players we'll mention here, it's maybe you try to stick it out because it's such an odd year with no extra practice and everything. And you wonder how the rookies could have done better with the full OTAs and preseason. And if you stick with the rookies that you were kind of on the fence with all season, if you want to give them that extra time.
Right. So it'll be interesting, but we did lose our assistant GM, George Patton, to the Denver Broncos. He had 2 interviews with him. They loved him. He was touted as the Minnesota Vikings scout guy. He brought in late-round picks such as Diggs and Hunter, and you can see how well they did. Very good late-round guys. He's a scouting guru, and now he's going to be the GM for the Denver Broncos. John Elway said he's stepping down from personal day-to-day operations there in Denver to let George Patton take over. So Patton's going to have full control of that roster, and I think as soon as the Super Bowl ends, we're going to see them make some moves.
And maybe we'll see him actually draft a quarterback that he hasn't been able to do with us all these years.
Yeah, that will be interesting because there's plenty of pieces in the first, I think there's 4 that could go in the first round, so it'll be interesting to see what he does. I mean, they do have Drew Lock, who I do like, but we'll see because he's going to have full control, and there's going to be changes.
Yeah, when you get new coaches in, they're going to change what they don't like, and they're going to go back and they're going to look, and playing against them too is going to affect things. And I mean, if they do move off Drew Lock and they try to draft, they have a solid team built up ready for a good quarterback. They drafted who was the rookie receiver they drafted this year? Was it Judy, right?
Oh yeah, Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler as well.
And they're good receivers. You watch them; they're fast. They play good, and some of the quarterback play was lacking. But at this point, minus all of 8 teams. That's kind of every team.
Yeah, pretty much. Those guys are gone, unfortunately, for the Vikings. Of course, maybe it'll help. Who knows? We'll see come this offseason. Of course, the Vikings won't do anything before the Super Bowl. That's just not the Vikings. That's just not what they do. But again, we did lose those guys, so they're gone. But now the offensive coordinator, Gary Kubiak, is pondering retirement. And if he is going to retire, well, then we'll be looking for our 5th offensive coordinator in just as many years.
And it's the same thing like you have the issue with the Browns, who are changing head coaches every year. We may not be changing head coaches, but we're changing offensive styles and offensive schemes and everything every year. And it's hard for players to get behind a scheme, and especially if they like one and we decide, oh, no, he's gone now, we got to move off it. It's rough. And there's some speculation that maybe Kubiak's kid will come up, which I think will be nice because it'll I'm assuming he'll roll into the same kind of offense his dad had and give Cousins that second year of the actual same offense, give the whole offense itself the same kind of scheme. Or I've heard talks of the Chargers head coach after being fired would come here as an offensive coordinator.
I'd be okay with either one because I do like Anthony Lynn. I mean, look what he did with, rookie Justin Herbert. So I'd be okay with either one because Kubiak's kid is the quarterback coach right now. So I think either way, it's a win-win for the Vikings, no matter who we decide to bring in and bring up to that offensive coordinator position. Looking at who's coming, we kind of touched on that, and that's really it for right now. We don't know because, again, the Vikings don't do anything before the Super Bowl. They really don't do anything until March.
And when they do, they only do maybe a mild big splash. And we do a lot of just trading for picks and just acquiring picks is what we do. We try to build in the draft. And maybe that changes now that we lost Patton. And maybe Patton had a big say in stuff. Well, we can get rid of him, get these draft picks, and I'll build you a better team. But like you said, it's too soon to know. And if you want to start with the offense and go through where we want to sit with the team.
So we signed 8 guys to reserve future contracts, one being the offensive lineman Zach Bailey, the other one being fullback Jake Vargas. He came into the game when we played the Saints, and he looked good. He was coming in and plays for Ham, and I thought he looked just like Ham.
Well, if you sit behind the bowling ball, you're going to learn how to be a bowling ball. And that picture you have him on your phone, oh my God, he is rock solid.
He is. He was a tight end, I believe, at North Carolina, but he switched to fullback when he came to the Vikings, and that was the right move. So he played most of the year on the practice squad, but he came up for that Saints game specifically, and that was the only game he played. But he looked good. He looked like a CJ Ham 2.0, so a good option if Ham ever is out again. Then we signed another guy, Blake Brandell, who was a 7th-round pick in this past draft for the Vikings, so he'll be, again, another guy that we have an option at. Quarterback Jake Browning, he's been with us for a couple of years. Cornerback Tay Hayes, I apologize, that's Tay Hayes. Cornerback Cordra Tankersley, he was with Clemson and with Miami, those practice squads for a couple of years. And another quarterback, Nate Stanley from Iowa, he's got a stronger arm. Safety Luther Kirk, and then tight end Brandon Dillon. Dillon, he's a guy who is more of a possession guy, not so much a blocker, but it'll be interesting to see what we can get going with him. I like him in the couple of times that I've seen him. I think he was up on the active roster for one game this year, but I liked him. He looks solid.
I've been missing those preseason games. I would like to see what Nate Stanley can do. He's, like you said, he's bigger, he's got a stronger arm, and you wonder if Cousin just craps the bed next season, can't handle a new coordinator again, if you see that, or all the quarterback trade talk out of every team is wild right now, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. We'll go to the All-Pro team now. The Minnesota Vikings had one, and that was Justin Jefferson, deservedly so. But I think the bigger topic is who of the Vikings was snubbed from that, and that was Eric Kendricks. Now, again, you can make the argument, he missed the back half of the season, but he was still our second leading tackler, having missed all those games.
And I mean, I don't know how you don't vote him in. This year, when he was playing, he looked faster, bigger, stronger. He was over the field more. He was just everywhere. He looked more dominant than I think I've seen a linebacker in a long time.
He looked like the best linebacker in the league, to me anyways, when he was out there playing. So that one, and then Harrison Smith didn't get in. 5 interceptions, no big deal.
I think I feel like it's kind of a popularity thing. A lot of the Vikings don't get a lot of popular votes because I feel like we're just shoved off way up in the north. No one really cares. No one looks. But again, there's another player that you look, how do you not put him in just about every year? He outperforms, and he's a great safety.
He really is, and he had to do a lot of work this year, of course, coming down in man coverage sometimes for the corners, even covering Harris's behind because he would be out of position. So he was everywhere this year, so not his fault that maybe his sack numbers dipped this year. Not his fault at all. The other one was Adam Thielen, and the reason why I say that is because Cole Beasley got an All-Pro nod, and he had 943 receiving and then 4 touchdowns. Adam Thielen had 925 yards receiving and 14 touchdowns.
That's only 70 more points.
Yes.
And that's the thing that kind of makes you wonder. I mean, I know that they are more competitive playoff-wise, but...
Yeah, but, I mean, if we're really going to go with it that way, then none of the Vikings should be on here, and none of half the guys should be on here that are.
Yeah, and I don't know. I kind of wonder how they decided, because you have stats that are outrageously one-sided for one person, and then you have another stat where it's like, I mean, I guess they got farther in the playoffs. I mean, if that's the way you want to go about it.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. I may never know, but he was not an All-Pro. Cook wasn't. I mean, he was put out for Alvin Kamara. I don't understand that. I don't get it. Dalvin Cook had over 1,500 yards rushing. I think cumulatively from scrimmage he had close to 1,900 yards total, and he had 16 rushing touchdowns, and I think a couple receiving. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. And you can say, oh, well, Kamara had that big game against us, but the team the bed on that game and you want to give him 6 touchdowns, that's fine. But any other game, he looked obviously he's not average, but he looked like just a standard running back, part of that carousel I was talking about earlier. You had the 1,000-yard, and then they drop down. You have 1,000, they drop down. He's up there, but I don't know if he outdid Cook at all this year.
I don't know if he did. I mean, yeah, in the one game, 6 touchdowns, like you were saying, but other than that, I really don't think he did. I mean, you look at what Cook did when he was playing and when he was healthy. Other than Derrick Henry, he was the best back in the league.
It's hard to go against it because you look at his stats and then you look at the sheer impact he had on every game. The games that Cook was able to get his foot in the door, and which was just about every game, all but maybe 1 or 2, and the one game he missed because of his father dying, which I feel like you can't count that against him.
No.
And it feels like a different offense compared to the Saints, where, I mean, you have Breeze back there.
Yeah.
And the Saints don't have to rely as heavily on Kamara. You have Breeze, maybe had Breeze at this point.
Yeah.
And he'll go through and he'll do his deke and dunk all the way down the field and get you points.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kamara is more or less not the runner as a running back, but more of the pass catcher, because to this point, I don't think he's had a 1,000-yard season as a rusher. I think this was his best year as a rusher, but usually he's 700 and 800 both receiving and rushing. So I don't think, I'd have to look at the stats, but I think he maybe touched 1,000 this year. I don't know. I think he was still under, but that'd be an interesting stat because I know he hasn't done it since he's been in the league. I mean, yes, he's very good. He's a very good player, but he's not the running back I think that'll take the ball 25, 30 times in a game. I just don't think that's him.
And it kind of goes to the thing you said earlier about it's starting to becoming a running back by committee thing. They have Murray back there to take some of the heat off, and while we have Madison, and I think Murray's probably the better 1-2 punch to Madison and Cook a little bit. Madison could come out and be even better. I watch him. I enjoy him a lot.
Yeah, I think Madison complements Cook very well, but yeah, I do like Murray. I do think he's still got a lot of speed. Everyone, when you talk about Murray, everyone says, "Oh, he doesn't have the speed." Then he gets in an open field, and it's like, "Whoa, there he goes." But continuing on with the All-Pro snub list, Riley Reiff, he played over 1,000 offensive snaps, had 1 flag on him, and allowed 1 sack all year, and he doesn't make the All-Pro. I think that's the one I'm most upset about.
And another thing, too, coming on the Vikings Viking team thing, he should be comeback player on this team. He had a atrocious season the year before, and we'll get into it later, but I wonder if he was really trying to help the guard on the inside, but like you said, how do you not make that? It's 1,000-some snaps, and you let up 2 negative plays out of 1,000.
Yeah, that's just crazy to me that you can't put him in. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see that many good left tackles this year to get over him. I thought he was top 5 for sure, but apparently not. And then the last one was just C.J. Ham, just cause C.J. Ham, I think he scored 3 touchdowns this year. He had his first receiving touchdown this year. You can't take him down on first contact. You will not. It's just not going to happen.
No, and there is not a better fullback in the NFL. And maybe it's just personal bias here, but I love Ham.
Yeah, I would say Juszczyk might be up there, but I think it would still go Ham Juszczyk, because Juszczyk is really good at getting the ball out of the backfield, receiving-wise, running-wise, he's really good. He's still good at blocking, but not like C.J. Ham. When C.J. Ham goes to block, even if he misses just a little bit, he's still the best blocker as a fullback.
And it's like, I don't think it's very close either, because, man, when he hits that hole first, he moves people. He moves backers. He moves anyone in his way. He stops them down. It's a joy to watch, because you get a linebacker blitzing in hard, and he just runs into a bowling ball and gets knocked over.
Yeah, it really is. When you watch the replays of Ham running through the hole, you might not see it on the play while it's happening, but then they show the replay, and it's like, wow, that play was really made by Ham. So I think that was a snub. Now to look back on the rookies, how the rookies did for the Minnesota Vikings, starting with Jefferson. We know how he did. 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns. Broke Randy Moss's rookie record for the Vikings, and broke the Anquan Bolden rookie record for the NFL.
He just looked amazing. He looked like the superstar receiver that we needed to fill in the void from Diggs. He came in and did it all. He went and played outside. He went over the middle. He went deep. He came up short. He got the ball. He ran after it. And it's just fun to watch an amazing receiver. Not that Diggs wasn't fun to watch.
Yeah.
He's an amazing receiver in his own right, obviously, if you look at the Bills. But
Right.
I enjoy the receiver position more, but it's just fun to watch him.
It really was, and you can't help but think, Thielen's coming towards the end of his career. I mean, he's going to be 31, so we'll touch on that in just a second. We'll keep going with these rookies. Jeff Gladney, he didn't have an interception this year. He did lead the team in tackles and tackle for losses. Actually, he was tied with Eric Wilson in that regard with 8. But he I'm not going to compare him to Antoine Winfield because Antoine Winfield was a great player, but he played a little bit like him in the fact that he was willing to come up and hit anyone, whether you were the 5'8", 160-pound running back or the 6'6", 270-pound tight end. He came up with no fear and laid you out.
He plays big. When he comes to hit, he brings the house. And another person I loved watching Winfield for that reason. He had just a small little guy and come up and he will just smack the hell out of you. And there's a couple times this season where, you just watch it and it just reminds you of him. You can't not think about it. And it's even funnier because Winfield's kid was in the draft. We could have picked him, and he's fun to watch too.
Yeah, he is. But Jeff Gladney, he in coverage, he wasn't the greatest on man coverage, especially against those bigger receivers. He did get manhandled a little bit in zone coverage. You've seen kind of the lack of speed to catch up to those guys. So that was kind of the thing where I think he struggled a little bit, and that's why I think a guy who we're going to talk about just a little in about 2 players that we'll talk about on the other side of him. But then it was Ezra Cleveland, the tackle. Actually, we switched him to guard at left guard, and when he played, you definitely noticed the difference between him and Drew Samia, and it was good.
It was, I think it was a big difference. He came in and he shored up that line, a majority of it, and there's times he got beat. He's still a rookie. He's not nearly as strong as these D linemen that have been in the league for 12 years that are, I'm going to bench press this bus, get away from me, and you can't take that away from any. Sure, there's some linemen that come out of college that are already that strong, but for linemen, you got to give them that year or two to really beef up and get you ready used to that.
Yeah, and especially this year, I think there's a much bigger curve for rookies. But continuing on, another guy that I want to talk about, Cam Dantzler. He had 2 interceptions on the season. I personally believe he is the cornerback number 1 for the future for the Vikings. He did have a couple plays that he gave up that were just awful. They were awful. The one to DK Metcalf in that Seahawks game, man coverage going downfield, pretty much a go route with Metcalf. The ball was underthrown. Metcalf stopped and jumped up for the ball, caught it, and then Dantzler was about 10, 15 yards down the field in front of him. It's like, how do you miss that? How do you miss that?
And it's a good coaching opportunity for Zimmer to teach him how to do these kind of things, and he didn't have an OTA to learn these things from Zimmer, and with the full season now and hopefully OTAs and preseason and practice, Zimmer can get to him and teach him. Keep your eye on him. Don't just assume he's going to run down the field on you. And towards the end of the season, I think you started to get what you're going to get out of Dantzler. And it's two positions you don't want to ever hear names from. If you hear a corner's name, he's messing up or he made a big play. O-line, you hear his name, it's a sack.
Yeah.
And you didn't hear anything from Dantzler because no one threw at him.
Yeah.
And, they picked on Gladney more because Gladney, I think, struggled more as a coverage corner. You get some good and some bad. Dantzler's a solid tackler. He's not nearly the bulldog that Gladney is, but like I said, there's a reason they weren't throwing at him.
Exactly. That's very true. Moving on, DJ Wanham, he did all right. He didn't play as much as I thought they would have liked to have put him in, but the Daniil Hunter comparison, I'm not going to go with that because I don't think he was on that level. He's a lot slower. He's a lot less strong, but he had 2.5 sacks, so he looked decent. Then it was
the best sack of the season.
Yes, on Rodgers, the strip sack. Then it was James Lynch. He didn't play too well. He had a sack against the Seahawks, and I thought he was going to explode after that game. He didn't. He didn't do much after that. Troy Dye, I was excited about him. He was, up to that point in the draft, my favorite pick of the draft. Against the Lions, he went up to try and tip a pass. Unfortunately, it was caught, but he looked like LeBron James going for a slam dunk. He got up so high.
He's got some strong legs. To get up there, and he did. He got way up there, and it's kind of a mismatch if he can lay him down the weeds and then he can spring up like that. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be able to fit that ball between him and the safety when he can cover what looks like 12 feet in the air.
Yeah, no, so he's got some hops, but in the run game did not look good. But that, again, come maybe with another full off season. Harrison Hand, mainly special teams guy. He came in here and there, but he had a pick against Drew Brees. That looked pretty. Other than that, didn't play much. KJ Osborne was supposed to come in and be the, oh my goodness, the, new Percy Harvin for the Vikings. That didn't happen, as our return game, I think our biggest return, both in kick and punt, was 12 yards.
And it's another suffering of the special teams. The special teams really let all of the Vikings down. There is very little good and mostly bad that came out of it. Hopefully with the new coordinator, it'll get a lot better.
Hopefully. And then the O-lineman that I told you signed a reserve future contract, Blake Brandell, he was a 6th-round pick. Then the safety, Josh Metellus, he didn't play a whole lot. He was on special teams. I think he was the one bright spot on special teams. He made some really good tackles out there on special teams. And
he was flying whenever he got free, and he looked faster than most of anyone on our team when he got running.
He did. Surprisingly, he did. And I was kind of surprised they didn't put him back there to start that Lions game, just to kind of get a feel for what he's going to be, unfortunately. So maybe that was just because they wanted to see if Harris was going to magically turn himself around to see if, maybe we'll give him another tag. But yeah, we didn't play him, and that was unfortunate. I think he's going to be a good player, though, for the Vikings. Then, my favorite pick of the Minnesota Vikings draft last year, in the 7th round, our first pick in the 7th round, we drafted Michigan State's defensive end, Kenny Willekes. I freaked out when I saw that come across the board.
He is an athletic monster. I showed you, or you showed me the video of him just doing just super athletic things. It's like, man, and he got hurt, right? Early in the season?
Yeah, he got hurt before the season actually started, so he was on injured reserve all year, so we didn't get to see him in any action. I feel like with the revolving door that was the defensive line, he would have played plenty.
I think he probably could have even taken a starting spot. You see, I like to see how that athleticism would have transferred over, because you get some people who are just straight strength, I'm going to move you. You get very speedy edge rushers in Griffin.
Like Ngakoue, too.
Yeah, Ngakoue. And then you get some people who can just finesse their way through a line, and that kind of seems the way he would be with all that athleticism. He can get down, he can go around you, it would just seem like it'd be a perfect fit for him on the inside there.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I seen some tape of him. I watched it. I loved that pick. I was surprised he actually lasted until the 7th round, but thankfully for us, because we got to draft him. Quarterback Nate Stanley, didn't get to see any of them, so that's still up in the air. Brian Cole, a safety, he didn't even wind up being on the Vikings team. We cut him. And then guard Kyle Hinton from Washburn. They were pretty high on this guy. They said he looked like he had some good strength. He was a guy who we could develop into something. I don't know. O-linemen, when they're from a D2 school, it's hard for me to give them any hope, but maybe they're right. Maybe he waits a year or two, puts on some mass, puts on some strength, and he's the next starting guard.
And the Vikings are good at using those late round picks to develop good players. And if they see something in him, we have to give them that chance, because look what they did with Diggs. They developed him. Hunter is turning into possibly the star D end here.
Yeah, no, and I think we'll go into that right now. We'll look at the Vikings free agents and possible cuts that we might make, or guys who could simply not be around next year due to contract disputes. So we'll start with that. Free agency-wise, it looks like Anthony Harris will be one. I don't think he'll be back. Then it's Eric Wilson, Rashad Hill, Amir Abdullah, Sean Mannion, Dakota Dozier, Todd Davis, Brett Jones, George Iloka, Hardy Nickerson, Jaleel Johnson, Chris Jones, Ifadio Denebo, Mike Boone, Chad Beebe, and Brandon Dillon, but again, he signed that reserve future contract. So that is where we sit free agent wise. There's not a lot of big names out there, but it's the depth names.
Yeah, and a lot of these people, to be honest, some of them they chat me the wrong way, and I wouldn't mind not seeing them come back. Like Harris, and with as big as Harris's contract franchise tag was, he did not play nearly up to that. There's a lot of times where I understand you want to make the big play, you want to jump down on the dig route and take that ball away, but you got to watch your assignment over top. You're deeper than the deepest man. That's the basic thing of a safety. Be deeper than him. And I know Smith has his free reign to do whatever, and you watch Smith could get pulled back on the leash because he had to watch all the other DBs and everything. He had to go back there and sit back and be a deep safety when normally he's a linebacker, he's a DN, he's everything.
He really did, and so that'll be interesting to see, because he was kind of like the teacher back there. He had to sit back and watch and just help everyone. But yeah, I don't think Harris will be back. That $12 million was not worth it, in my opinion. I'm glad we didn't sign him to a longer deal, though. That's a highlight of that. Eric Wilson, that's where it gets interesting. Now, he's going to demand a starting contract, rightfully so. 3 interceptions, 3 sacks, and just all over the field for us. But I think where this gets interesting is whether he comes back or Barr comes back. We can't keep both. If we sign Wilson to a contract, Barr is gone, unfortunately. We trade him, and we're gonna get something for him. I don't know if we'll get a first round, maybe, because the Jets wanted him, but he chose to sign with the Vikings for less money over the Jets because it didn't feel right. He wanted to be in Minnesota.
I mean, does anyone really want to be on the Jets? Let's be honest here. But
no.
And I know we stand on opposing sides of this. I'd rather keep Barr. I think Barr is the better player and the better run filler, and you like Wilson for you think he's a better coverage, and you think he's a great tackler.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that Barr is the better run filler. That is 100% I agree with you. But my problem is the fact that we like our running backs to go out in man coverage a lot, and Barr can't. You've seen it. At tight ends, he's fine. He can cover the tight ends great. You get him on a running back, if he has to be, he can't do it. He can't cover that quick of a guy, and where Wilson can. Now, yes, Wilson does struggle in getting off of linemen and getting to the running back unless he's blitzing and finds an open gap. That's where Barr is better, getting off of the blocks and getting to the running back, and his long arms help. I mean, he's got an 8-foot wingspan, something like that.
Eagle back there.
It really does. He looks like an eagle, but I think Wilson is a better option at this point because I think Barr, his contract is going to be more expensive than what Wilson would be if we signed Wilson. Wilson is younger. I think he's about 2 years younger than Barr. Barr's on the back half of his career now, and I think you might as well get something for Barr right now before you can't, because whether we keep Barr we keep him this year or we get rid of him, he's going to go somewhere else in the next couple seasons if he stays with the Vikings. Either way.
And he will, as all good players will, they'll go take their leave eventually when we can't afford the contract, like a lot of the other players that are coming up here in the next few years. But I think you keep him for one more year and you draft another linebacker to fill in that can bridge the gap between the two of them, because you have one on one side and the other one on the other side, and we kind of need a middle guy like Kendricks who can do it all. And I think you can bridge some of the issues with Barr's coverage by just dropping Kendricks into coverage, because he was making lights-out plays across the field and getting these running backs on these little swing passes and getting them behind the sticks.
Yeah, he really was, and that's why Kendricks is so good, is because he can just really do it all. But I wonder how different it is between Barr's position and Kendricks, because Kendricks is the quarterback of that defense. It's usually Barr who calls the plays. Let me correct myself, but he had to do it this year. He looked good, and it looked like he had a little more free range this year, but he was mainly covering over the middle and then running backs when they would come up and kind of on those out routes. So I don't know how different the positions are. I'm sure there's a big difference once you dive deeper into it. I feel like if we're going to keep Barr, you might as well send him down to D-end, cut a bunch of guys to make it work, keep Wilson as well, and because I don't see him working out with us too much longer as a linebacker. I mean, we've said it for 3 years now. Put Barr down at D-end, and you don't have a problem anymore.
Yeah, that we've agreed on. It's a solid agreement. It's D-end Barr, and it will be great. I enjoy watching Barr pass rush. It's unworldly because he comes in with those big eagle arms, pushes the lineman way back, and it just cuts himself underneath, and he's there. I think him as a D lineman would be wild.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So moving on from that, Rashad Hill, right tackle, I think he's just too valuable as a depth guy to let go, and I don't think he'll cost that much. His contract right now sits at $1.1 million, and I don't think it'll be much more expensive than that to take him back. Amir Abdullah, I think he's gone. I think it would be okay for us to get him back, but I wouldn't be sad if he does leave.
I enjoy him as a third down back. He catches the ball good, and he makes the yardage that we need for a lot of those plays. And there's a couple times where he got it all the way into the end zone, and you just like him. He's a solid player. He's a solid third down back.
Yeah, we'll get to a guy like a little bit more than him back there. But Sean Mannion, if he's not gone, if we re-sign him again, I think you're going to see Vikings fans protest. It'd be a stretch, but I think I would like to see us get Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I would like to see him in Minnesota. He's just such a good team guy, really like a locker room guy to begin with, and I just like the way he plays. He's got that I don't care attitude type thing, and he's going to fling the ball. And if he needs someone to come in and win the game, he did it for Tua for 4 or 5 games. He came in and won the game for Tua. It wouldn't be that weird of a stretch for him to come in when Cousins is struggling and just a change up and whip the ball like they're not expecting.
Yeah, I think it would be great to bring him in. He brings that unpredictability to him for any kind of team. Dakota Dozier, he did not have a good year this year. He came in and plugged in well last year for the Vikings, but this year, not so well. He did not do well. Todd Davis, the linebacker who used to play for the Denver Broncos, he had a few good seasons with them, and he was released surprisingly this offseason. We brought him in. Didn't do great in the pass game, but run-wise, he made some pretty good tackles.
He shored up the some of the run issue we had, and he just a solid running when you expect him to run it. Maybe keep him around just for those kind of situations. Other than that, I mean, if he's cheap enough, you might as well keep him for depth. If we're going to have to get rid of Wilson or Barr, you have to keep some of them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. He didn't play, I don't think, well enough to go out and get a starter's contract again. He's 29, so I think we could get him back at probably a little more expensive than what we brought him in at. Of course, a veteran minimum, but he'll probably want about 1.5 if we do bring him back. Brett Jones, the backup practice squad center, he played guard a little bit, looked awful, looked just like Drew Samia. He won't be back. George Iloko, we brought him in for depth. He got injured, was on injured reserve the entire season. I don't think he'll be back. In a crazy world, though, if we don't bring Harris back and we don't feel like we can get any trade prospects or all the starting safeties are too expensive, I could see us bringing him back as a number 2 string.
I could see it, but he's getting up there in age too, isn't he? He's getting real old, and when he came in and played those few times, you watched him, and I don't think he fits very well with what we needed him to do. He looked like he was more so out of position than Harris, and he didn't look like he knew what was going on.
Yeah, no, so that'll be interesting, though, because maybe, again, full off season, we'll see. Hardy Nickerson, he came in and played pretty well. I liked him out of that linebacker spot. He made some pretty good tackles. I thought he was decent in the pass game, so that one will be interesting. He's 27. Jaleel Johnson, the interior defensive line, I don't think he played well enough to stay. He was supposed to be that new 3 technique. That didn't work out. He didn't do well run stuffing. I don't see him coming back, unfortunately, and then we're going to lack depth in that position this year. Chris Jones, the cornerback, you and I have very different opinions on this. I'll start with mine. I think we need to bring him back. I think he's a good depth player. He did make some bonehead plays and bonehead decisions. Of course, not tackling might be the worst decision of all, but he had some good coverage plays. Now, he reminded me of Xavier Rhodes a little bit in his coverage because he had good coverage on some of these guys, but they just made a better catch.
And I'm not going to say that he didn't play good, but it's just that play against Dallas where he made that choice of not tackling the running back, and he runs it. The running back goes in for a touchdown, and that's the difference of the game is 1 touchdown. And I don't know, he just chapped my ass when he made that decision of, I'm good.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, but I think he should be back. But yeah, that one play, that maybe that is the deciding factor, which for a lot of coaches, it would be. Then it's Ifeadi Odenigbo. Man, I wanted him to so badly have a good year. I wanted him to be the guy that I thought I'm pretty sure thought he was going to be this year. Come in, replace Everson Griffin, have about 8-9 sacks. The D-line couldn't even muster up 3 themselves. Our leading tackler was Yannick Ngakoue. He had 5 when he left, and no one got over 2.5. So he didn't do well. Of course, I feel he didn't even get to start to begin with because it was Yannick and Jalen Holmes to begin. So it'll be interesting. I love him. I think he's a good player. I think he's just a solid guy. He might not cost that much to come back, but maybe he wants to go somewhere else and try to be a starter.
I mean, he might, and he definitely could, but I think you're just going to see a lot of new faces on the D-line, period. That was probably one of the worst downfalls of a D-line I've seen in a while, because it just, everything was porous. They got pushed around, they got bullied every week, and when that suffers, you get the secondary that suffers, and it all kind of just runs together. It's rough because you like the guys, but you need someone to play, and you had a few people that kind of would spark here and there, but none of it was consistent.
No, and I think that was the biggest thing for this defense this year was the inconsistency. Running back Mike Boone, I would love to have him back. I think he's just a run-tough guy. He just goes about, does his business, and he does it well because when he cocomes in, man, he is so hard to bring down.
He's a thunderbolt in the bottle is what he is. You just toss it in and you let him just shock the hell out of people.
Pretty much. Chad Beebe, I could see him coming back as a depth guy because he came in and played that slot spot, the number 2 spot. I think he held for a minute or 2 this season. season. So he could be, he couldn't be. That one is kind of up in the air right now. So that's it for the free agents, though. There are some bigger spots to talk about, specifically guys who could not be back because we could cut them because of cap space. I'll just list off the guys who I think could be cut. One of them, Reef, Rudolph, Barr, and Harrison Smith. And I think those are the biggest guys. I don't think we cut Hunter. I think if anything happens with him, he sits out this year to wait on a bigger contract. We don't give it to him. He's gone next year.
And I can see all that. I mean, we are in cap hell with this, and with Harris being gone, that frees up some. We obviously don't bring him back the way he played unless we're going to bring him back for a substantially less contract. The Barr Wilson issue could go either way. Reef, I think he'll go. Not that Reef didn't play good enough to justify him, but I think he walks because he was kind of disrespected by every fan.
Yeah.
And he threw it in our face. He really did. You got most of the D-line. There's issues there. You're pairing Pierce. Did we ever find out if Pierce is going to play another year because he opted out, or if that's just a lost year on us?
The way I think it worked out was that counts against the player. I don't think we had to pay for his contract this year is the way I understood it. I could be wrong, but that's how I understood it.
Okay, well then we'll be adding his contract to this too, and makes it even harder. And with $1 million man Cousins eating up as much as he is, it makes it hard to keep players when you need them, and we need a lot on defense.
We really do, and that's another topic of conversation is that quarterback spot. I think we'll touch on that just briefly. There's a lot of trade talks between a bunch of different quarterbacks. We know the Watson one. Cousins is, I don't think he's on the table, but the discussion is, and I think it could go deeply. Tua, he's on the table. Stafford, he could be on the move.
I've heard a lot of Stafford is probably done with the Lions, but you never know, and I don't know how as the Lions, you get rid of Stafford. He's an amazing quarterback.
He is. I just think he wants to go out and actually compete somewhere where he has a chance. Here's a wild thought. If we were to trade Cousins to the Niners, they take his contract, we get a first and a second round, maybe a first and second and next year's fourth for Cousins. We go out, we use our 14th pick that we have. We bring in Stafford, we trade him and Reef to the Lions. Reef goes back to the Lions. We get Stafford, and they get the first round pick of the 14th spot. What do you think about that?
I would take it. I would take Stafford immediately. He is an Iron Man, and he's like Fitzpatrick. He's not afraid just to let loose. And with Thielen and Jefferson, you kind of it's one of those, that'd be really nice. It'd be really cool. He would just throw the ball to Jefferson and make him go get it. And he won't shy away from it, and he doesn't shy away from contact. Yeah,
no, he doesn't. And like you mentioned, he is an Iron Man, probably the toughest quarterback out there. But I just can't help but to think, if he comes onto this team, I think we'll get similar production to Cousins. I think I don't think we see necessarily less. I don't think we see necessarily more, because Cousins, he's had 1 year where he didn't throw for over 4,000 yards here. I think Stafford does that, and I think he has 30 touchdowns, maybe more or less picks, who knows, but I think they're almost the same player. I think Stafford has the more get out of the pocket, more senses pressure better, but you put him on the Vikings, who have a run game. That's what he hasn't had in Detroit.
Well, he hasn't had that, and I don't think he's had solid coaching in Detroit. There's a few spots that you could add Stafford, and I think Stafford would explode. You give him a good coach and decent receivers, he would explode. If the Bucs move off Brady after 1 year, it's a 1 year thing, it's done, and they bring in Stafford would explode with the Bucs, I believe.
He really would. That would be a good spot for him, too. But I just think it'd be interesting, because if we were able to shore up the defense, even get halfway better, oh my goodness, this team next year is almost unbeatable. I mean, that's a dangerous team. But that's just one thought. Of course, there's a lot of different spots that he could go. We'll move on from that discussion. I mean,
you go hours on that discussion.
You could, but I think Cousins is going to stay put. If not, he's going to the Niners. I think that's the only spot he goes. Looking at some different other areas of need, offensive line, interior, exterior, you could name it. D-line, corners, safeties, there's a lot.
There's a lot of players that we need to bring in to fix a lot of these issues. A lot of the issues is in the trenches on both sides, which some of it could and will get shored up, and with Pierce coming back, and if Hunter comes back and plays, those are two huge pieces for the D-line. Then you only need to worry about really 1, 2, and you can draft more. Secondary, I think the rookie corners will get better with the whole offseason, OTAs and everything, and practice. Practice will help. And safety, you draft safety. I don't think there's going to be anyone open for any kind of...
Well, it depends, because John Johnson for the Rams could be a free agent. Marcus Williams for the Saints could be. Then there's Keanu O'Neal from the Falcons who could be. I think those would be the top guys that we would have to look at and target. I mean, there are a couple of veterans out there that you could bring in alongside Harrison Smith and go, okay, here's your 1 year, this is win now mode. Of course, I don't really like that saying because it always is win now, but I think there's enough out there in free agency. It just depends on, are the contracts friendly for the team, and I don't think so.
And that's what I mean. I'm not that there's good safeties out there we could trade for. I don't think we could afford a contract for any of those decent safeties. So I think the way to go is we'll have to fill a lot of these holes with rookies just for the cap issues we have.
I think so too, but I think one spot where we need to at least bring a veteran in, a decent veteran, a guy who has played well throughout his career, maybe hasn't stuck to one team, but he's gone around and he's just been a decent spot on the team, is the cornerback spot. We need to bring in a veteran who has seen action, who has done well his entire career, isn't a guy who's just, he's a veteran. He's been the fourth, fifth string his whole life. No, bring in a guy who's been that third and second string his whole career, just a decent, solid corner who knows the ins and outs of the game, can come in, teach these rookies, and it just, I think if we bring in that veteran, it shores up that cornerback spot.
I can see that. I mean, they need help. They just need extra leadership. And you saw in the game Smith getting frustrated and trying to tell them what to do, but he can only do so much from sitting on the field, and a frustrated Smith isn't good. You don't like when players get frustrated. You watch him, and then he tries to compensate for it, and then there was one play, I forget who it was against, and Smith was compensating for one of the corners. I think it was Dancer on that one. Dancer had...
I think you're right. I think I know which, yeah.
He came underneath and left the guy over top, and Smith came down, and they threw the ball behind and over top of Smith. But in a right world where the corner has that understanding, and it comes to coaching too, and towards the end of the year, you didn't see as many of those issues. These were early season issues. Once that turned around, Smith could have a little bit more leash on him to walk around and do what he normally does, but before that, he had to almost puppy guard extra with these corners.
Yeah, he really did. So, and that's unfortunate because, as you mentioned earlier, Smith is just kind of that free roaming guy. He just goes and does whatever he wants. And I don't think so much as they play call for him as much as they just say, hey, you see the field, go do what you think you need to do. I think he does listen to the play call because if he doesn't see something or recognize it right away, he sticks to the play call. But I think for the most part, he kind of roams how he wants to. But this year, definitely wasn't able to do that, unfortunately. So I think for spots-wise, obviously, D-tackle, I think we'll need to bring in another run stuffer in the middle. I like Shamar Stephen, but he's getting up there in age, so I think we need to bring in another guy. I don't think a rookie. I would like to see us go out and sign a D-tackle. Is it going to be affordable is the question. There are a lot of D tackles out there this year that we could bring in, but it's just a question of if the contract is team friendly. More than likely, no. But again, for all teams this year in the NFL, the cap space is going to be smaller than it has in past years due to the new agreement. So it'll be interesting to see who's out there and who all is going to be willing to be like, okay, yeah, the cap space is smaller. Or maybe I was injured last year. I didn't have my best year last year. Okay, I'll take a little bit of a pay cut and come play.
And there's that, and you wonder if maybe you can talk Cousins into a pay cut. It should be a very hard sell on him for coming off the season. He had a great season. Then you wonder maybe you can talk Cook into somewhat of a cutback. But again, he had another great season. Thielen, you could probably get into a cutback because Thielen he loves the team. And I don't know if there's that many players on the team anymore that'll take it just because they like the team.
I think Thielen would be the guy to take the pay cut. How big, we don't know, but I think he wants to stay a Viking his whole career, start and finish with the Vikings. I don't think he wants to go anywhere else. He is from Minnesota. He's lived in Minnesota. He went to college in Minnesota. He was going to work in Minnesota had he not made the NFL. His family's in Minnesota. That's where their home is. I don't think he wants to go anywhere else. I think right now they need to start talking to him, say, hey, we love you. We want you to stay here for your whole career. We don't want to have to move you. Can we make something work?
We want to give you help.
Yeah.
But that's how you got to approach all these players. Hey, Cousins, look at me. You want to win games? Yeah, you want help? Take a pay cut.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's going to be the hardest sell right there is Cousins because he had a good year, and it's guaranteed money. So who knows if we can't even get him a pay cut because it is guaranteed money. So he would probably have to give up money. So it's going to be hard. I think that's the hardest sell would be Cousins. That's why. And I'm not saying we trade Cousins simply because I don't like him. I don't like the fact he weaseled his way to the guaranteed money. He kind of scammed us in that way. But he is a good player. He has done the job he's needed to. I mean, he's had the, fifth most seasons with 3,500 yards passing and at least 25 or 30 touchdowns, along with Hall of Famers.
He does put up Hall of Fame numbers, which is wild to me to think about, and I'm sure a lot of Viking fans, it's a, but...
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly what it is, and maybe this year is a knocking him in the face, like, hey, you can put up all the points you want, put up all the yards you want, but we don't have help on the defense. We need money. Give us the money back.
Yeah. So I think that'll be the hardest sell, but if Kyle Shanahan wants him, he's gonna try hard for him, and I could see it happening. That's the only team I can see it happening to, but we'll wait and see on that one.
And the way you sell Cousins this Shanahan is with those same stats. You see that Hall of Fame number? You see that Hall of Fame player? You see that? Oh no, that's Cousins. What?
Yeah.
What, you want a potential Hall of Fame player?
Right. Exactly. Reef, I think it's too far deep into his career to take another pay cut. He just did this season. Smith would be another hard sell because he's getting to the back half of his career. He's experienced it all. Bad season, good season, highest of the NFC Championship to the lowest. I think the lowest point was simply being blown out by the Eagles right there. I think that was the lowest point in any Vikings career. So I think he's seen it all, and I think if you go up to him and talk to him about taking a pay cut, I think he's going to say, give me my walking paper so I can go somewhere competitive.
And, I mean, he said he wants to win. He wants a ring by the end of his career, and he deserves it. You can't if he leaves and goes to a team if he goes to the Chiefs or something like that and wins a ring, I can't be mad at it. I'd be, upset because he's gone, but I wouldn't be mad at it. He deserves it.
He really does, and it's scary because I think the teams that if we cut him or trade him, I don't know if we could get a first-round pick for him. I think we still could because he's still got a lot of value, but if we cut him, I'm scared because there are two teams where I think he could go and immediately win. That's the Packers and the Bucks.
I could see that, and you would hope they trade him to keep him away from anyone in the NFC. I don't want to face Smith twice a year. I've watched him, what he does to people, and I don't need Cousins to stare down that barrel. Talk about something that'll make Cousins nervous. Yeah, you send him to the Bucks, and he'd be amazing. You send him to a team that who's another playoff team that struggles?
The Browns, the Bills. Well, not necessarily the Bills, but the Browns and the Chiefs.
Yeah,
there.
Who do the Chiefs have for safeties?
It's Tyrann Mathieu, Juan Thornhill, Daniel Sorensen. But if you want a guy to be right next to Tyrann Mathieu...
Could you imagine that combo? Oh, my God. I remember when Mathieu came up, and it's like, I know we can't afford it, but just think about it. I
mean, they're basically the same player, just different ages. They do the same thing. They come down, they rush the passer, they tackle the running back, they go back and cover, they got the space to cover. I mean, it would be scary if he went there. Tight end wise, Rudolph, he's not going to take a pay cut. He's gone. But then it begs the question, he's got so much invested into Minnesota. Not just the team, but all his foundations are here.
Yeah, and maybe he does take a pay cut. Maybe he wants to be done here. He wants to retire here, And that could be maybe he just takes pay cuts until he's just phased out of the entire NFL, which, he could. You don't see it very often. No. You see it very little. But he's another one like Thielen that you could foreseeably see him just take pay cuts and take less and less until he's just phased out and retires.
I think there's two ways that could go. I don't know. I feel like if he's asked to take a pay cut, he might just say, you know what? Nah, I'm going to retire so I can retire at least with the Vikings. Or he decides, nah, I want to go win somewhere, and then we trade him, and we'd have to trade him to a contender, but he deserves to win. He deserves to win. Such a nice guy. Then probably just the last biggest piece to talk about is Danielle Hunter. He missed this entire season because of a neck injury. You wonder if he's going to be the same player. You wonder if he's...
I've seen him in the gym. He looks like a bigger player.
Oh, man, that's scary to think about. The Vikings are going to have leverage in that regard because, hey, you didn't play this whole season. You're not going to get the money you want. Yeah, you're going to get paid, but you're not going to get what you want because you sat out a whole year.
Yeah, and you need to come in and show. When he was playing, he was amazing. He deserves the money, but maybe they can, like you said, try to finagle him into... You could probably get more money, but you got to play all year and play damn good.
Yeah, and more than likely he'll go to a team who's rebuilding. So, you can come back to the Vikings where you know everything. You know you're going to be the centerpiece, and you're going to have all these guys come back healthy next year. It's going to be interesting because...
You can use the Jets again. You can come back and play for us, and we can work out a contract, or you can go jump with the Jets and have that dumpster fire.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because I think Daniil Hunter is on that D-line, the centerpiece for it. He's going to be a big piece for us. Hopefully he's able to come back with us. Other than that, I think that's about it because we don't really know who's going to be free agents. We don't know who's going to be released, who's going to be that one surprise cut guy. We just don't know, and all that's going to come to fruition after the Super Bowl, and that hasn't happened yet. So it's hard to say right now because you can look at all the boards and go, oh, he's going to be a free agent. Then all of a sudden you look, 3 weeks from now and, oh, he just signed a huge deal. Never mind.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll just have to wait till it gets closer. There'll be definitely a podcast all about what free agents are coming, just a free agency podcast, maybe once or twice, back-to-back weeks as it gets closer, and coverage as everyone gets signed and cut and switched, and it's all going to be pretty wild.
So quickly, we'll touch on the Minnesota Vikings, not necessarily schedule, but we know the teams for the schedule next year. Of course, we play the Bears, Lions, and Packers twice, one on the road, one at home. But our home opponents look like this. By the way, all of these, except for one, are playoff teams. The Steelers, the Browns, the Rams, the Seahawks, and Cowboys. Are you kidding me?
If we get to the playoffs next year, every team better be worried because we'll be smacking playoff teams left and right if we actually make it.
Yeah, because that's a stacked schedule. If you are able to, because you're probably gonna have to win 10 games to get into it. Maybe not because of the 7th seed. So maybe 9 wins get you in, but I think 10 wins for sure. I mean, Steelers, Browns, Rams, those defenses pretty darn good.
Yeah, and then you have Wilson's Magic. That'd be a tough day for the defense.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Then the away teams, I feel like they get a little easier, but you just never know because Vikings on the road aren't the best bet. So we go to the Bengals, the Ravens, the Niners, the Cardinals, and the Panthers, and I look at that and I go, okay, that's not bad. The Ravens might be a scary one, but the one that I actually worry about the most is the Bengals.
Yeah, well, I mean, you wonder how Joe Burrow's going to come back after the injury, and when he was in, he was lighting teams up. He didn't lose games. The rest of the team lost games, and
it was that defense, really.
Yeah, and it just makes you worry, especially with as bad as our defense was. Unless it gets fixed, we're going to get shredded in a lot of games by a lot of points.
Yeah, because they have good offensive weapons. They have Joe Mixon, the running back. You have Joe Burrow, their O-line. That could get help, but I'm sure with the cap space they have, they'll go out and grab 1 or 2 solid guys and make them high-paid guys and be like, you are going to shore up our O-line, protect him. Other than that, I think the away schedule is winnable. That Ravens game, you know what? We've seen plenty of teams beat the Ravens. We haven't played Lamar Jackson yet, so that will be interesting. But
I like to see the athleticism between Kendricks and Lamar.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good one.
Well, with him and if Barr does stay or Wilson, I think both, with Kendricks or Barr or Kendricks and Wilson, either way, they're going to get out to the edge and not allow Lamar to do much.
No, they're going to need to. And like we saw with the playoff game, that's what you got to do. Either force them out or keep them in, and it gets tough.
It does. So that would be an interesting matchup. Other than that, it's pretty favorable. I don't think the Niners get everything fixed next year. Their offense could still be dangerous, but that's still up in the air. Cardinals. It's the Cardinals. They're a toss-up every single year. They look like they were going to make the playoffs this year. They flopped on their face.
Depends on which Murray you get.
It really does. And then the Panthers, it just depends on if they're healthy or not, really.
Yeah, and if McCaffrey comes back and good and they get some other pieces, it could be a scary team. Anytime you have to face McCaffrey, it's scary. But if you have a full team behind him, it gets rough.
It does. I think this next year it'll depend on how the schedule is placed. If we face these playoff teams in the first part of the season, I don't think we have a chance because then we'll probably start out again 1 in something or 2 in something, and then we got to come back, and that's not easy to do. But if it's 1 week here and then we got somebody else here, and maybe 2 weeks in a row, and then 3 weeks or 5-6 weeks from then we play another one of those teams, I think that would be okay. But I really do think that it's going to be kind of how the schedule is set up. But I think that is it for this episode, Brandon, unless you wanted to add anything.
No, I think that's good.
Tune into our next episode. We'll go over the playoff games that have happened so far in the playoffs up to the AFC Championship games, or the AFC and NFC Championship games, rather. You'll get our predictions for those games and who we'll see in the Super Bowl. But as for now, I think that is it for our very first inaugural episode of the Northstar Sports Show with ET&B. I'm Ethan, the ET part of this podcast.
And I'm Brandon, the B part of this podcast.
And you have been listening to the Northstar Sports Show.